From this to this.
You are all successful. Equally, each and every one of you here right now carries the same accountable success in your business, unless you choose otherwise.
Hi all and welcome to, of course, this week's edition of Lifestyle Business. And guess what? Yes, you'll see her right in front of me here. Donna Kennedy stroke Slattery. But Donna Kennedy, to all her friends and everybody that knows in the professional world, this lady is the absolute cutting edge of influencing. Now, you know, you can see someone that doesn't take recognition very easy. Look how staid that lady is when I'm just telling the world how brilliant she is. And absolutely, this lady is phenomenal. So we're going to really deep dive into two of the most prominent and hidden, I'm going to say, emotional values that are being adopted in these last 2 years of COVID, which of course is, I say of course, do you know what? This is very hidden, but we're going to deep dive into this today, guys, and you really want to grab your pen and paper and put your heartfelt thinking hats on, because we are really going to look at life envy and business envy. Yes, I did say those two categories. Really fragile, sensitive, but you know what? This lady is going to turn them inside out with us today. Hugely excited. So let's crack on. First of all, let me intro this. Our guest today, she is a 7-time best-selling author. Where you get time to write that many books, I'll never know. Qualified psychologist, professional speaker, mentor, and I'm going to put this in there, influencer. She's a major influencer to the influencers in the influencing world, specializing in personal development, using proactive solution-focused approach. Ooh, yes, an expert in the mind body with strategies that are proven to work in real life settings. She's extraordinary, charismatic, remarkable speaker, and everything that comes with it. And it's going to bring this lady in, you know, here we are, Donna Kennedy. Boom! Coming in, girl, coming in.
Thank you, Paul. I'm actually quite happy just to sit here and listen to all these compliments. Are you sure you don't want to speak? Continue.
Donna, I am so grateful that you've come on the show at the short notice that it was, and knowing that, you know, we were coming on here to intensely dive into the two of the major categories, hidden emotions that are, I'm going to say, hugely affecting life and business, and that's life envy and business envy. Firstly, give me your two short insights as to what you feel they mean.
I feel that it's where people are comparing themselves to what they see in front of them. And for the most part, that is an illusion of reality. So people are comparing themselves, whether it's in life or whether it's in business, to what they see, for example, in media, on social media, conversations where people present the good stuff and they don't include the full reality. And it's a very, very dangerous thing to do, is to compare yourself to something that doesn't actually exist.
Wow. I mean, when you think about that, it's like living in a pantomime, a make-believe world. And this is what people are projecting out because of their own disappointment of what's happening in their life, their own lack of worth, their own need to be liked, imposter syndrome. All these things come behind the feed to creating, let's understand, I'm going to say this, creating life envy. People are creating life envy.
Well, I suppose, Paul, you know, being socially liked and accepted was years and years ago part of our social survival. It was necessary for us to fit in, otherwise we'd been rejected and the human race wouldn't exist. So it was very useful back then, but now it is not useful. We don't have that necessity to fit in order to survive. But I think mentally people have carried that on, where, you know, people don't want to be rejected, people don't want to be judged. The age-old question, am I good enough, whether that's asked consciously or unconsciously, really plays a huge part, especially in today's society, where people do question themselves. How am I measuring up against so-and-so? How do I compare? You know, what is my standard? How am I benchmarked? And we live in a society of comparisons now, which, you know, is a dangerous thing. funnily enough, after the networking event this morning and before this interview, I had a conversation with somebody who's very well known, and they had told me that they were suicidal.
Wow.
And I spoke to them and I asked them, what was this all about? And again, their needs weren't being met. For a start, is something I recognized straight away. So, we're going to work on that. But really, it was because they were benchmarking themselves against what they felt that other people have, this notion of success. And success isn't a thing you can have or get. It's not anything that's in a bottle. It's not anything tangible.
Yeah.
Success is a concept that we create in our minds via a story based on what we see around us. And if anybody was to define success in today's world, they may say it's, are you well known? Have you got lots of money? Are you succeeding in business? And so on. Or do you have the perfect relationship? And the reality is most people don't have, or if anybody has perfection, everyone has their bad days. The tricky part is people don't see those bad days. Very, very few people will put up, on social media, for example, that they have cellulite, or they won't put up their pictures about their business has failed, or their really rubbishy Christmases, or that they're alone, or whatever. They don't portray that side. So people say enter your life or enter your brain as happy notions of perfection, that nothing is going on in anybody's life other than your own. And therefore that can feel quite isolating, and it can also make somebody feel rejected, judged, and not good enough, which are the things that human beings, it is the one thing that people will do absolutely anything to avoid. And when you take the fluff out of everything and you keep unraveling with questions, what somebody's issue is at the core, it will always come back to, am I good enough?
Let's you're a gloves off person and you say it as it is, and that's what I love about our conversations. Let's make some accountability here to the social media world. Let's say stop creating life envy, stop creating business envy. How do they do that?
I don't think social media companies will, because
let me come back in. Sorry, Donna. Let me come back in. Let's take the social media companies out the way and let's say, do you know what? Actually, social media is driven by everybody that's on there. They are the audience. So let's talk to the audience. Let's say, okay, people, we're going to be real here. You're creating a synthetic exaggeration of what's going on in the world, and the result of that is that we could say the extreme result is people are taking their own life. People are committing suicide because they believe they're not good enough comparing to everybody else. Let's say, let's first hit those people. Let's say, how do you be accountable?
Well, I think the first thing is to be honest, and to be real. And it's not a very easy thing for most people to do, because people always have that version of themselves that they show the world, because again, they don't want to be rejected. So it starts that the conversation has to start with yourself. How honest am I being with my life at the moment? And the part, I suppose, that people struggle with that is, if I ask people, let's look at your life and your needs and see how balanced your needs are. When you actually sit down to do that exercise intentionally, and it's staring you in the face that, wow, my life isn't, that perfect balanced thing that I see everyone else seems to have. Mm-hmm. It's easier not to look at that. But you know what? A great point, and I have done it for myself, and it is a tricky one to do, but it's to embrace disaster. And it's simply to say, where your starting point is, even if it's absolute disaster, at least you know where you are. Yeah. And then it's about deciding where you're going. It's a little bit like, if I want to go to somewhere on a journey, I have to enter my sat-nav destination, but I also have to enter my sat-nav location. Otherwise, I get nowhere. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people focus on the destination, and they focus on, you can put up whatever, all the good stuff, but they don't focus on where they are. So they're always chasing something and looking forward. But if you think about it, if you're sitting in a car and you're looking forward, which is great, but you're not turning, the key, or you're not realizing where you are or the steps in between, then you're missing the entire journey. You're not having an experience. You're having just thoughts and projecting of what things could be or what things should be, rather than where am I at right now? Could be disaster. So what? At least we know what it is, and then move from there. And people should be able to share where they're at right now. Now, that's not to say that people have to mope and get it, wallow in circumstance, because that's not healthy either. But simply to say, point blank, everyone has a bad day. There's nobody who doesn't. And even to recognize that fact, anybody you meet has cried in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody you meet has had a frustration day in the last year or an anger outburst in the last year. Probably everyone you meet has probably lost somebody or has had something happen in their life to do with loss in the last year. And for most people, it can take about a year to get through, especially if it's something, you know, deep level emotion, to process that, or even a month. So every single person you meet, just to have the understanding in the back of your mind that you're meeting a version of them, you're walking into that chapter of their life.
Wow.
You haven't read the chapters before it.
Yeah.
So you're meeting them on that day. So for example, if you meet somebody that's just come out of a meeting to say that they're bankrupt, and you meet that version of that person that day, that same person could be a very different behavior, different feelings, different thoughts on a day that they're not told that. So people have a judgment on the days that they meet somebody, and that can be on social media, in person or otherwise. So it's really, it's important that people understand that when you meet someone, you're meeting a version of them based on what happened that day or that week.
Do you think, Donna, that it's healthy to be 100% authentic in what you say, what you put out on social media, and what you demonstrate, or where you tell people your business is at that given point? I mean, some people say you shouldn't say too much, and you're right about don't hang your dirty washing out, but still be authentic. Do you think there is a line that you work from, and what is that line to be authentic, do you think?
Absolutely. It's called intelligence. And that is where it's, there you go, gloves off. It's absolutely 100% be authentic, but don't give, you know, stuff for wolves to tear apart.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're going through a difficult time, is it wise to share it with, and you can fill in the blank of that person or people. If it's not, then find somebody who it is smart to share it with. So I wouldn't suggest for a second that people go out, be authentic by telling everybody their business. And to be honest with you, many people don't want to know.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to a conversation, most people will say the word I many more times than you. And it's because people generally have references for themselves. So I would say absolutely 100% be authentic, but be careful and intelligent about how you treat that authenticity.
Because if we look at, you know, and again, we're aiming you, first of all, viewers and listeners, at the I'm going to say the unconscious delivery of what creates life envy and what creates business envy, because nobody specifically wants to go out and say, oh, I'm going to write this because I want people to be jealous. That isn't where it is. But people, as you say, creating that camouflage of what they are going through. That doesn't mean we live in a world of misery either. But let's be clear that mental health in the business and personal life is fed by life envy and business envy. It's fed because of that creation of perfection in somebody else's life. So coming back to those people, we're saying be authentic. There's a line there, put your intelligence behind there. Don't, but also it can't be healthy. You can't be emotionally healthy if you are prompting quotes in social media that are not a true reflection of what you're going through. You know, I mean, one more thing on this. I get, you know, I've read the book, The Secret. Put it out there, say it's going to come. I get all that. But come on, girl. You know, it's okay to do that, but that's also creating a false sense of surrounding, do you not think?
Correct. I've worked actually with a lot of people in The Secret, and every movie and book is edited and created to sell. And I'm not, you know, targeting any particular book or anything, but every book and movie is created to sell. I've worked with a lot of people, as I said, in The Secret, and there is a huge part of the jigsaw that isn't discussed very well or at all, and that is action. Everything is to do with action. Every response, negative or positive, is to do with action. I can decide I want to win the lotto, but unless I go out and buy a ticket, well, good for me for that wish. So you can wish everything you want, but unless you take action, it's not going to happen. So I've actually, I suppose I created a term called conscious detection. So rather than the law of attraction, which is, for those who don't know, it's a concept discussed in The Secret, which is what you think about most comes about. And it's not really a new concept. So if you're constantly focusing on something and visualizing it and creating a vision board, it should show up, right? But action is necessary. So conscious detection is where your brain can, give or take, hold 5 to 9 pieces of information at any one time, in or around that. So if I said 5 to 9 pieces of information is priority in my mind, I'm going to start seeing it everywhere. So for example, if I decide that I want to buy a new Mercedes-Benz, guess what I'm going to see on the road? Mm-hmm. Now, it's not suddenly that I attracted to loads of Mercedes-Benz and suddenly, some higher power just put more on the road. It's my brain has set that as a priority, and therefore I'll see it everywhere, like a laser beams in on it. Yeah. If I decide I'm going to, get a new dress for Christmas and it's going to be red, guess what I see everywhere? Yeah. Or I decide I'm going to Spain on holidays. All of a sudden, people are talking about Spain. I see ads about Spain and so on. So we consciously detect based on what we unconsciously prioritize, sometimes consciously prioritize. And then it's up to us to take the action. And that steps into another law of the universe called the law of vibration. Now, if you look at any word that is to do with goal attainment, you will see for most words, if you was to give somebody a blank page and say, write down the words you associate with achieving goals, they would say things like persuasion, creation, passion, persuasion, determination, million, whatever, right? So if you look at the end of each of the words, it has ion, which is an electrically charged molecule. Mm-hmm. And when we move, or when something moves, it's like an exchange of electricity, that then is the result is created from, not just wishing it. Wishing it is not enough. You have to have reactions, you have to have actions, and you have to have productivity in order to bring something about. So you have to be, I'm probably one of the most optimistic people you'll meet, but I'm also realistic.
Yeah. But then let me come back in there, Donna, because now what we've explained, you've given a really easy and a beautiful detailed understanding of this is how the law of attraction works, really. But then let's come back and say, okay, what is the balance of that you would put out there that's actually, your actual life and then your wishing life? Because remember, this wishing life is what's creating the life and business envy. So what we're doing is saying to people, okay, this is the accountable measure. This is the sensible measure. One, so you can grow. And secondly, so you don't interpret it. Or you don't, sorry, I even got that interpretation wrong. You don't put out a persona that's actual, not fact, because that means there must be karma for that, because you're creating a false identity, which isn't who you are, but then that's creating a reactive, we could say, response from the people that are seeing it that go into life envy. Did that make sense, Audrey?
Yeah, I would say project the best of you. And when I say the best of you, I don't mean the notion of perfection. Express the best of you. I mean, it's not a case where people want to see the negative you all of the time. And most people aren't negative all the time. So just acknowledge your life for everything that it was. And I've had a difficult life myself, my early parts, and you know that. So acknowledge your life for everything that it has been. And that's not to diminish or minimize or anything like that. But then look at, okay, your future. Are you going to place your past in front of you so to filter your future? And it's like walking, with a set of glasses on. You put blue filter glasses on, you'll see everything blue. You put yellow filter glasses on, you'll see everything yellow. Do you put your past, that filter of your past or filter of your current reality that isn't nice? If you look at your life and everyone around you through that lens, things are not going to look good for you. Now, I know it's a little bit far out, so bring the I suppose the scientific, because a lot of it can appear a little bit airy-fairy. So bring the scientific back to the practical. Now, when you say, what you put out or karma or anything like that, to make it scientific, if you look at take an average battery that you use to work a remote control at home, right? If you look at that battery, you'll see 1.5 V on it, which is voltage. So that's a measure of electricity or energy. Now you look at every cell we have in our body. Each cell we have in our body is actually energetic. There's a voltage of 0.07. Now you look at the average human being is 35 trillion cells or 50 trillion cells. Do the math and you'll get 35 trillion volts of energy in anyone's body, an average body right now. That's colossal. What we do with it will predict how we feel. So even though it sounds odd, if you think of a tumble dryer, and have you ever taken something out of a tumble dryer and you get like a fuzzy feeling or a shock? Or maybe you've touched somebody and you get a shock and you go, oh, that, you know, that was horrible. That's electrons jumping from you to the surface and vice versa. It's just jumping. You can't see it the same way you can't see the wind. You see the result of it.
Yeah.
So we're in a constant energy exchange between the things and people around us. That's why, for example, you have a phone. That phone is a frequency. You go into an underground car park, the signal goes. Mm-hmm. It's the same as, so if you have frequency in your system, you have electricity in your system or energy, and if you put something there that's going to block that, or something there that's negative, you're going to have a negative feeling, which will release negative aligned chemicals in your body. So the key is to select your environment, or otherwise known in scientific terms as your electromagnetic field. And that simply is looking at everything that you are taking in and you're interacting with. So almost if you look at it like, you know, a phone, who are you calling? Who's calling you? What conversation are you having with the world? So if you're constantly talking about negative things, you're actually impacting other people, but it's also impacting you. So you have to choose, you know, who are you around? Because their energy is going to affect you, whether you like it or not. You can be in a great mood and you meet someone and they start talking about all the bad things in the world. Your mood starts to dip, whether you're a positive person or not. Now you could be in an okay mood, and then you meet someone that's very vibrant and your mood shifts. So check who you're around, check what you're putting into your brain. Are you listening to bad news all day? Every piece of information you put into your mind, you have to try it on in order to understand it for your brain. Mm-hmm. So if I start describing a scenario of something horrific to you, whether you like it or not, whether you're a positive person or not, your brain will try it on in detail. And then it will say unconsciously, how does that make me feel? What chemicals do I need to release according to that? So if I'm constantly engaged in or listening to negative news, horrible posts on social media, people being mean to other people or getting involved in drama or whatever, and I'm constantly listening to that and expecting myself to feel good and get good results, well, I'm deluded. Instead, intentionally, and I had to do this myself, Paul, I had to create an environment that had as much positive things in it as possible. Yeah. Whilst, you know, life happens, so not everything in your life, or you're never going to have a life where you don't experience challenge. Yeah. But it's about being selective as to the environment you are in and what you take in. Yeah. Wow. And that's super important.
So we get an understanding here of really what you need to be listening to, why you listen and the process of listening to keep a good balance, we're going to say. And we've kind of touched on, you know, what creates life envy. We see that on social media, and also we're saying, you know, in order to have a good return for your investment, what you're putting in social media, be authentic, but understand the intelligence behind that authenticity, in the sense of, you know, look at it, look at the cause and effect of what that will create, and don't put on there something that's not. You know, be true, but be true to the point where you're not also spewing garbage out every day, and it'll make people ill because it's so disappointing.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're ask yourself before you put something up on social media, is this likely to get a negative energy around it or a positive energy around it? Now, that said, if you have something that's really bothering you, it's essential that you share it, because suppressing things, if you don't express, you depress.
Oh, wow.
So
say that again, girl. Say that again.
If you don't express, you depress. Wow. So when somebody is pushing emotions down all the time, they're not expressing them. It's dangerous. And that's why people go to bad places in their head. You need to find somebody, and there are people there. If you need to require professional help, by all means do. But don't be afraid to do it, because people it's a constant cycle of being depressed or angry or frustrated. When you don't express, you might as well be a pressure cooker.
Oh, wow.
So to find people who will respect your feelings, will hold your feelings, and will treat them as they deserve to be treated. Mm-hmm. when you put things on social media, you are literally giving your feelings and your mind to, you take your pick.
World.
You don't know who's going to come onto that. And if people think that there aren't people watching who are not my family, that's not the case. If it's online, it can be taken by anybody. So what you put up there, you have to be prepared to be able to deal with the energetic consequences of it. So I always put up, you look at my posts, they're always positive. Why? Because I post when I feel good. I post what I feel that will help people most that day. Mm-hmm. Do I have an occasional bad day? Of course I do. But I have more good days than bad days. Mm. And that's the key, I think, to a happy life, is to make each day as meaningful as possible, as plentiful as possible, and to value your time in a way that makes you feel that you're living, not just that you're pretending and existing.
And let me take this to I want us to just talk about something that's been real in COVID also these last couple of years, because we touched on it this morning, which is the suicide rate. And the reason why I want to bring this in, because it's when you just mention the word suicide, it's a fuzzy feeling, you know what I mean? It's like, wow. But you mentioned you've seen that increase. You've seen that you understand the numbers have increased, especially for men.
And I think the reason for that is every single person, it doesn't matter what age you are, where you're from or anything, every person has human needs, and our needs are fairly general across the board. So people, for example, have a need for a sense of order in their lives, sense of independence, to get and give attention, sense of security, exercise, sleep, and so on. So we all have certain needs. If somebody is stressed, it's 100% their needs aren't been met at that given time, one or more. And I think there's about 14 certain needs that I identify. And one or more definitely not been met if somebody is mildly stressed to traumatized. And the issue at the moment is that people don't know what their needs are, and therefore they're not paying attention to them. So a lot of people's needs have been compromised over the last 2 years. For example, one of our needs is connection to other people. Now, if you look at the last couple of years, connection to other people isn't balanced. Mm-hmm. People have a version of which is mostly online, or they're completely isolated, which is the opposite end of the scale. So also something like, I believe that, men and women are equal for sure, but I also believe we're very different. And I think in my own experience, I think that men still have that residue of your innate born provide for my family. Yeah. And when you're put in situations where, for example, you may have somebody who's a certain age and they don't know how to use a computer, or their business is not adaptable to using Zoom, for example, they're in a bit of a tricky situation. It's very hard for someone to go home and say, sorry, I can't pay the mortgage this month. Yeah. And when that pressure builds up and somebody doesn't see a way out, they create a permanent solution for what is actually a temporary problem. And with right attitude, skills, and knowledge, could be solved. Yeah. And that's the unfortunate thing is that people don't know what to do. So therefore they do things that just cut it off, which isn't useful and creates pain for everybody that lingers on and on and on beyond that decision. So I think people just need to be a little bit more honest and focus on right now getting their needs met in a balanced, healthy way. And I often liken it, I suppose, Paul, to a plant. If you have a plant that has potential to bloom and you give it too much or too little of something, maybe you give it it needs water, air, sunlight, and soil. If you give it too much water, it starts to die. If you give it too little water, it starts to die. So a plant needs things in balance. Humans do too. Yeah. And if you give a human too much of something or too little of something, it starts to die. Now, just like a plant will twist itself towards the sun to get as much sunlight as it can get if it's deprived, it'll look miserable doing it. It will also look miserable trying to get water if it's dried up. Humans can look very miserable and feel very miserable, trying everything they can to get their needs back to balance. And if they can't do it, death is an option, but it's not a good option. It's not a wise option, especially because there's always a solution. You just might have to look a little bit harder, be a little more honest and open to help and accept it.
I'll be upfront here. I know I've had suicidal thoughts in my life. Twice as a teenager, I tried taking my own life, and I think that obviously I didn't mean to, otherwise I wouldn't be here. I think there are, there's possibly versions where there's a cry for help and there's an actual event that takes place. And, I've been absolutely within this 2-year period, I have failed to pay my rent once or twice, and I have financially flatlined due to, the situation. But, I've had good people around me, yourself, your husband, and lots of that have been a big part. And you're right, getting the right people around you to actually praise you out of that, that almost like a boxed mindset. And working through that now, I'm going to say I'm in a far greater place, but it's only been these last 3 months where I've really kind of got myself back in on. And there's things I've had to do, even things as simple as cutting out caffeine and so on, that have, an emotional effect on me. But also what I've done there, Donna, is I've focused less on what I'm reading on social media, which has helped me a lot. And do you think that we should monitor that? We should really understand what's on there, and and even be somewhat selfish and ask yourself, well, how real is that really?
Well, there's two things. Definitely, 100%. I can't even stress that enough. Be selective. Whatever you process, whatever you expose your brain to, whether that's visual, whether it's auditory, whether it's, through your smell, through your taste, or whatever, your brain, in order to process it, has to try it on. When you try it on, it releases certain chemicals, good or bad feelings, whichever. It will release them regardless. So you have to be careful as to what you're trying on. So in other words, if you read something and it's not going to make you feel good, don't read it. If you're going to have potentially a conversation with someone and you know that it's going to lead to drama or negativity or bitchiness or whatever, if I can say that, don't go there. Don't elaborate on that. That's a choice. Now, I'd also like to point out the second thing, which is there's a difference between being selfish and self-centered. Self-centered means that you think the world revolves around you and no one else matters. That's not good. It's not healthy. Selfish is always good. If you go onto an airplane, the air hostess will always say every time, put on your own air mask first. And that means you strengthen yourself to be in a position where you're strongest to help others. So if you don't look after your needs, like, it's not a luxury, it should be a priority, because if you don't look after your needs, you're actually making yourself a diluted, weak version of yourself, and you can't be there for anybody. So in fact, it is probably the most selfless thing to be selfish. So if it's an option where you have to select what you're trying on every day, then do that. And you're better, you're stronger, you're more focused, you're clearer, you're happier. And ultimately that gets you the results. Because if you don't do that, the alternative is that you're negative and you don't have clarity, you're foggy thinking and you can't concentrate. So to choose, you have to choose one or the other. And to me, it's smart to be selfish. You're not being self-centered.
That is such a beautiful approach. Because here's the thing, when people use the word selfish, they almost say through guilt. When you say, yeah, I'm a selfish person, it's like imposter syndrome, everything comes into that kind of emotion. But what you're saying here is, no, it's hugely important.
It is hugely important. Yeah.
Wow.
And look, the problem I think as well a lot at the moment is overwhelm. Right? A lot of people are feeling that they just can't take it. So one thing is piled in, and another thing, and another thing. And if you imagine you have a box or a glass or whatever, and you keep filling it up and filling it up and filling it up, and you don't have like a diffuse option, it just builds up and builds up, and it's eventually going to explode or spill over. So you have to have your like standards and your boundary lines. And I often use, there's a course I teach called Drive Your Life with Confidence, and I often use the analogy of a car. And if you imagine, again, I've mentioned this already as the analogy, but if you imagine you're in a car, you would expect there to be boundary lines on the road so people know where they stay and where they can cross. Mm-hmm. You expect people to indicate when they're going to do something. Mm-hmm. You expect that there's certain, standards and boundaries there to be followed. And you'd actually be quite annoyed if people didn't follow them. Now, what boundaries and standards do people intentionally set for their lives? If I ask people that, they probably couldn't say, if I asked them to write down what your standards and boundaries are. I don't know. Well, you should know. And that means intentionally taking, a while out, whether there's, half an hour or whatever, get a blank page and write down what boundaries do I need to put in place in order for me to be the best version of myself.
Yeah.
And that is always a good thing. You're never nasty when you have a boundary. You're doing out of kindness. So you say, okay, this is what's okay and this is what's not. For example, one of my boundaries is I will not be hit. That's a boundary. If someone crosses that line, well, there's a consequence.
Yeah.
So you have to have your rules and your boundaries for your life, the same way as you would in a car.
Wow.
You know, if you're in a car and you have someone fire rubbish or scream at you, what do? You say, you know, you stop or you get out.
Can we put that boundary then? Because coming back to, you know, our power purpose today, which is life envy and business envy. Let's put boundaries to that. Let's set something in place so all the listeners and all the viewers here today can give themselves a bit of thought as to, wait, what's the cause and effect of what it is I'm putting out there to other people? Let's start there. What is that boundary? We've talked about, you know, thinking about what you write, but really, you know, should people be looking at what is the cause and effect of what I'm putting out there? How is that affecting the ecosystem of people's healthy thinking?
Absolutely. However, it is important that people don't hold back their happiness for the sake of not offending, because happiness can be an inspiration to other people. It's when people put up, for example, people filter everything. Why filter? Just put up whatever it is that you're enjoying. You know, if you've got a win, if you do something well, absolutely put that up. You have a right, and it's good to celebrate. It's good to celebrate your achievements. It's good to celebrate a happy moment with whoever. The thing I think people need to be careful of is more the negative stuff, which is putting things up like an in-your-face statement.
Okay.
Or things like, oh, look at them, they're not good enough, or who do they think they are, or whatever. Also, then on the flip side is, don't engage in posts that are that involve drama, or that are likely to create a snowball. So don't even comment on them. There is an option, you know, you can still love the people. There's an option, for example, on Facebook, mute someone for 30 days. Give yourself a break, see how you get on. And if they come back and they still do the same thing, then mute them again. And sometimes that is an option. It's there for, I think it's a great option. There's so many options available.
I love that, Donna. I love that muting option. It's like almost as if you can give your emotions time to settle. And because so many people are lost in themselves because they're wishing to be like somebody else.
Yeah, and it's, you know, even in life, in real life that's off social media, you know, you have to look at, you don't, when I say in real life, right, you don't say mute someone, because you can't just, I wouldn't suggest anyone like disown someone or get rid of them or anything like that. That's my disclaimer. But I would just to say, but I would say select your conversations, select the time you feel comfortable giving to people who, you know, will emotionally zap you. And you need to be selective. I personally feel that you need to be selective. So if I say, okay, I know somebody who, if I ask them a question, they're going to go off on a big rant about how awful the government is, or how awful this thing is, or how their partner is this, or whatever. And it's okay for people to share, absolutely. But there comes a point where it's like, as I say, like an emotional vampire.
Yeah.
Where it's feeding off your energy, you have to protect. And I actually do a technique, and a martial artist shared it with me years ago. And it's called the zip up technique. And basically, if I go into a situation, obviously in my work, I can meet all sorts of different people. I'm meeting people all the time. Imagine like an invisible sleeping bag, and you can hop inside it and zip it from under your feet right the way to the top of your head. And you can breathe, of course. And if you happen to meet somebody that is talking at you or saying things that are making you feel bad, literally imagine that for that moment and limit your time with that person. You can still love them.
Yeah.
But limit your time. And you have to understand sometimes people are in angry places, and that's absolutely okay. But it doesn't mean to say that you have to hold that anger. So, you know, don't ask open-ended questions like, how do you feel about that? Or would you tell me more, or explain or describe? Don't ask those questions. Just, you know, acknowledge how lovely they are, give them a bit of encouragement. And if they start to jump on that bandwagon, then say, no, today, that's not for me. Give yourself a break. If you have to do that, if you have to put on your phone, there's a little, you know, alarm. That's that person. or you set your, you set your times. For example, you have, a lot of people find it difficult with time options, or even giving their phone number. So if you go to, for example, a doctor, and you are a nurse, or sorry, a doctor or dentist, and you look on their wall, and on their wall outside the building, it says, I work from 9 to 5, or whatever their hours are. You wouldn't expect them, unless it was an emergency, to answer the phone and to actually attend to you, unless it was an emergency, maybe at 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock or 2 in the morning. Most people don't set themselves those standards of time. So you'll notice, Paul, that I actually, if people, I go to seminars and lots of people, I'd say at least 20 to 30 ask for my phone number. I don't give my phone number. And the reason I don't is because I just find that it can be an invasion of my time family-wise, that I may or may not be able to set the boundary tight enough for some people.
Yeah.
So then if I get to know somebody, I will give them my number. But I give them my email, no problem. And people can contact me and I will respond. So it's not that I'm closed off, but I'm careful as to how I leave myself open.
Yeah.
And because you can't reverse that. So unless you change your phone, but so it's just, and you don't want to be doing that. So you have to select is, what are my boundaries? What's okay for me? What is my family time, my friend time? And if you have to think of it like an appointment, from 5 o'clock until 9 o'clock the following morning, this is my big appointment. It's with my family.
Yeah.
And nothing gets in the way of that. And you need to set those boundaries yourself. And just, if people kind of know that standard, people know that you can't go to a doctor after a certain time. You can't go into a store or a shop after a certain time. They don't have an issue with it. Only occasionally some people will, but most people don't, because they know the rules from the start. So if you can set rules for most people don't have an issue with it, because, oh, well, that's what we do with that person.
And that's such a healthy way to live, I mean, if you take, say, go into the business world, 99.9% of the SME business owner world don't have a switch off set to their business, certainly to their mobile phone. In fact, they're addicted to the mobile phone, and generally that's through, I'm going to say, business envy, where they are reactive into their business because they're afraid they'll miss something if they're not by their phone, if they're not by social media, and so on. And
well, here's an exercise, Paul, that people can do in that regard. People, the first thing people will think when we say this is, I can't do it. That person doesn't get me. I'm different. Okay. She doesn't know what my job is like. I have to be at the end of the phone all the time. So here's an exercise you can do. Just do a 12-hour exercise. And you start at, say, 8 a.m. or whatever time you start your work. And every half hour you stop and you write down what you did for that half an hour. And then the next half an hour, write down what you did for that half an hour. Now, if people are genuinely serious about this, they can do it.
Yeah.
And you will find that half of the time that you think you don't have, you've spent on things that are nonsense. And now people may not understand that until they do the exercise. But how many times a day you pick up your phone for nonsense? How many times a day do you daydream about nonsense? How many times a day do you give to conversations that happened that you didn't like and you're rehashing in your head? So if you do that exercise every half hour, just do it for one day so you can see it. Every half hour you stop, you write down, what did I do for the previous half hour? Wow. And people will see for themselves. People are working in business because they want time.
Yes.
You don't want to, I've said it to you before. The reason people work so hard is not because they want a big bank account. Well, certainly not at the end of it. They want the big bank account purely to have it as a vehicle to live a lifestyle. And ultimately, that means creating time that they can spend with whoever matters to them. Isn't it a shame that they waste half their lives doing it? So
wow.
if you can, it is a shame. So if you can look at, now this is, for example, my son is 9. And, you asked at the beginning, how does someone write a book, or how does I write 7 books? So here's what I did. For me personally, I want to be able to pick up my son at 2 p.m. when he finishes school. He starts at 8:30. That's my window. So I know in that window, I have to get seriously productive. Now, one of those books, and here's the reality glamour here. One of those books I wrote in the back of a car and in the evenings for half-hour time periods when my son was asleep. That would have been when he was maybe 2 or 3. Because that's the time I had. And I wanted to spend the rest of the time when he was awake or when he was back from school with him. Now, I know there's people listening say, well, I can't do that. Well, look at ways you may be able to free up time that you're placing elsewhere on things that really aren't serving you.
Wow. Do you know, Donna, this has been such an amazing, beautiful, insightful call. I've really enjoyed this opportunity to deep dive into, and let's say this again, the stresses of life envy and business envy. And I'm sure that every listener and everybody watching this is going to get something fantastic out of it, because the stress, I can't stress enough, the reason why I badgered and Donna to come on today, because I know that she's an expert in this field, and I'm really seeing the cause and effect of this in business and personal life with people that I'm meeting on a day-to-day basis, even though it's a very hidden, secret kind of emotion is where we are. Donna, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your cutting edge, influencing, wonderful mindset. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you, girl, and hopefully I'll catch up with you soon.
You will, of course, and thank you so much. And I hope, again, as something I said has resonated with people, and stop stressing, start to express.
Thank you. Absolutely. It's been wonderful. And let me say this on air. Your husband is still punching above his weight.
You love that.
I know. Okay. Thank you, Donna, love.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.